channel. We are Duke's Garage. We are talking tools and into fixing cars. Make sure that you subscribe, cause all the stars you'll see. If you've got a project, this is where you want to be. Duke's Garage. Welcome to Duke's Garage. Yeah, we're talking cars.
Welcome to Duke's Garage. Today we have a 2004 Cadillac CTS. I have some other videos for the same vehicle online, so I will apologize if I'm repeating any information about this car that might be also on another video. But this is a 2004 Cadillac CTS, first generation of these CTS vehicles. This one has the 3.6 liter engine. It has a bad timing chain, and we are experiencing some timing chain noise. I'll let you see that video right now. So I've been looking online just to see what was out there for repair videos for these cars, timing chain repair videos. Didn't find a whole lot on YouTube, but I want to do a definitive video, every single little thing, very detailed. You'll see me go through my bumps and bruises on this job. It's a little bit more complicated than your average timing belt or timing chain. There's 3 chains involved. There's stages involved with setting up the chain, so it's quite involved, and I haven't been able to find anything really definitive online on just showing you the whole job. So this is going to be a longer video. I may have to break it up into a couple different segments, but I want to give everybody, a real look at doing this job. It's an important job. It's a common problem. The passenger side of the motor, that bank, is particularly known for failing due to some venting issues it has there. So we're going to show you that. I'm kind of guessing our fault and our problem with this timing chain is going to be on that passenger side bank. But let's open it up, and we're going to start moving some things out of the way so we can get to that timing cover. The timing cover is kind of a pain in the butt to kind of get it off. But we're going to go through every single thing, and hopefully this will help you if you have to do this job. Here's the new timing chain kit, and I'm praying that this photo on the box is just a stock photo, because this picture is sure short a whole lot of parts. So let's just open this thing up. I do like that, the box, I've seen a whole lot worse when it comes to buying things online. This is a US distributor. This is Maka. I got this on eBay. Cost $80, which is very, very good considering the AC Delco factory parts will run you, when it's all said and done, about $600. So, okay, got a little gasket maker in here. So we're going to go through and just make sure that all the parts that are listed on the description from the eBay description are actually in this box. I'm suspecting so because of just the overall quality of the presentation. I don't think this is somebody trying to get over on me. So let's open it up and take a look. So everything is here. All the parts, I got them all laid out. I took the photo from the ad from the listing, and just went and laid everything out to make sure we are in good shape. So we have the 2 upper chains, lower chain, tensioner. There's a tensioner for here. There's another tensioner up here. We have our 2 guides for this side. Our 2 guides for that side. We got the guide for the lower chain. We have another guide for the lower chain, crankshaft, gear, camshaft gears, yeah, this is all complete. So the only thing we need to add to this grouping is I need to pick up the oil pump. We'll go ahead and replace the oil pump as well while we're in there. There's going to be a lot of might as well jobs that we're going to come across when doing this. So we're going to do it as completely as possible. And but with the mileage on the vehicle, we want to make sure that we just replace all that we can and refresh everything and have the car running tip top. All right, so I already have the engine cover loosened up, but you want to loosen up your take off your oil cap, and then that'll allow you to pop it straight off, and then of course put that right back so that you don't let anything get down in the motor. The next step is going to be getting rid of this air box. Move that out the way. I believe we have a 10 millimeter, and we're going to pull that out, unhook the new thing, and get it out of the way. Alright, so this is an 8 millimeter or 5/16. I do a lot of work on foreign cars, Japanese and German, so most of my tools are metric, but I also do have some standard stuff. So 5/16 and 8 millimeter, same thing. You want to top that off with another one. It's down here. Loosen that up. So system lift off. There's a breather tube. Hooked onto the bottom of the air box. I'm going to pull this out, and then the whole thing will lift out. This piece here actually should stay with the tube, but this whole tube really needs to be replaced. There's something else we'll have to add to this job. But yeah, it's pretty worn out. But let's move that out of the way. You can already start to see that we're making space to get into this front cover. The next thing we're going to remove is the upper and lower intake. And before we do that, let me not forget, I need to disconnect this battery just to make sure we don't have any sparking going on. So again, you have some 8 millimeters here, or 5/16. Disconnect the batteries to be safe. So now we have to start disconnecting things from the intake, the upper intake. So here we have the brake booster hose. So a pair of pliers just to take that spring clip, pop it out of the way. We can kind of sit the hose out of the way. Alright, we have a valve here. I believe that's PCV. And I'm going to use this little upholstery tool to see if I can coax it out without damaging it. You see there's a rubber seal down here, so you don't want to screw that up. That's probably your PCV valve. And you can probably even take it off the connector there. Alright, this video should really be helpful when it's time to put all these things back. So we got another one on the other side here. So we got this guy and this guy. So again, we're going to just try to take our time, leverage it out, pull that out the way. Alright, this guy here has me a little confused. I'm seeing if maybe this is one you put pressure on one side or the other. I think I feel a tab here. Is that a tab? Let me see. Let me play around with this one. I'll figure that out. Here's a close-up of that connector. So what I did, I took a little flat screwdriver, and there's a little prong down here that you can leverage on, and then it allows you to slide it off. But what am I doing here? There we go. So that moves that guy out of the way. Next, we have these electrical connectors at the throttle body that we have to get rid of. Get out the way. So there's a little yellow tab here we're going to slide, and then we can push down on it. Slides right out. There's actually an issue with these connectors. This is a new one. You can see the white wires. These would normally have colors, but I actually had to replace this because we found out there was a bad connection on the back side of this deal. If you're having problems where the throttle body won't learn, you may have to replace this connector, and I'm going to share with you a video. A gentleman did a great job of pointing out where that fault was at. But moving on, we got that guy out the way. Now we got this harness that has to come out. So we're going to take the harness, set it to the side. There's some connections at the back of the intake. There's wire, things that hold up harnesses, little connections. Those have to get out the way, but what I think I'm going to do is remove the top bolts. I believe there's 6 of them. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in the back you get 5 and 6. Let's pull the bolts. Oh, actually there's another one at 7. Let's pull these bolts, lift this thing up, and then we can pull the intake forward, and it'll be easier for me to show you the bolts that the connections in the back you need to get to remove. Also, it's a great opportunity to take pictures so you can see how everything goes back before you take it apart. So we'll snap some photos just to make sure we put everything back the way you found it. I can see here there's another connector that has to be removed. That looks like a 10 millimeter. So all these things will have to come off of the intake so we can lift it out. I've loosened up these bolts here. These first 5 here. So this is a 13 millimeter or 1/2 inch, depending on what you're using. These guys all here were loosened up. Now we got one more back here that's kind of tucked, and you might be able to figure out a way to get to it. Maybe I'm thinking maybe in a socket. I might try that. Try a universal socket and see if we can get it that way. You'll notice that I pulled this top cover off the atrium here, and there's a bolt here, a bolt there, a couple bolts back there that will allow us to lift this out of there, and that would really clear out a lot of room. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with that method. The instructions, I'm looking at 3 different instruction sources. I have the factory manual, I have an all data do-it-yourself manual online, which kind of helps a lot to this kind of for comparison reasons. The factory manual can get a little cryptic at times, so the all data do-it-yourself is really helpful to sometimes help you figure out some of the things that might not be as clear in the factory manual. So in the manuals they're not saying to remove this guy, but it sure looks like it would make things easier to get it out the way. I think it also will make it easier whenever it comes time to remove the valve covers, especially these back bolts. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. I forgot to mention on this, to get this guy out of there, it has what looks like 8 millimeter bolts here, probably a 9/32 as well, or 5/16. We'll get those free. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Then the whole thing lifted off. You also will need to pull this piece of hood seal. That's easy, just to pull right out the way. Alright, so we got this little piece out of here. Just to make it clear, you see these bolts here, they sit back here, and you can see the studs. The studs form right there. See those 2 studs? Pull that bolt off of there, those 2 bolts off, and then you have one bolt that goes in the side here, and it'll lift out, and now the bolt we need, which is right here, totally open to grab that without any interference. So I'm going to put these bolts back on their studs just so we don't lose them. Okay, just for reference, front bolt here, shorter bolt, looks to be the same as this rear bolt here, shorter bolt. These 4 here, longer in length, so they all look to be the same deal. So yeah, you have 4 of these, 2 of these, short, the 4 long ones. Now you can see it's loose. If you pull it forward now, we have a better look at what's on the back side of it without having to struggle to get underneath of this atrium and the wiper motor and the wiper arm actuate, the contraption for the wipers. So now it's much easier to look at everything. So we have some things back here to disconnect. Let's get on that. We got some bolts to loosen up and some wiring connections. So we got this guy here. This sensor, it comes off, and you leave the sensor in the intake, the upper intake. You got one down here. Pull this, and that'll release this wiring harness from this side. That should free that side. I think there's one wire in the back too. I just noticed it. So we also have this guy here. I'm using a 10mm socket on it. So release that. And also there's one here for this. I think this is a purge valve. I'm not certain. I have to look that up. But release that bolt there, and I would encourage you to put the bolts back inside of the intake so you don't lose them. Back behind here, we got another connection down here. Push down this tab, there it goes. So pop that out. So I'm gonna take care of these screws, and then we'll lift off the intake. Alright, so we have everything disconnected, put our bolts back in place, upper intake comes off, put this somewhere safe. Let's also get this big air box out of here. So you have an airflow sensor. Let's see if we can get this connection off here. Alright, so this connector here, there's a little tab you got to push in. Mine's pretty worn out, so it didn't cooperate, but you push this tab in here and it'll slide out. Then you'll have 3 of these bolts. They're 10mm, and you got 2 here, 1 there. There you go. So we'll lift this out of here, and it looks like there's a hose hooked on the side. Get her to cooperate and slide out of the way. Here we go. Down my wrench too. Okay, so looking a little closer here, I realized, and I went back and looked at the manual. It is actually possible to remove. This is the lower intake. I removed the upper, but you can remove this all together as a single unit. So there's appears to be the 2 bolts, the 2 short bolts here, that were here and here, actually hold the upper intake to the lower intake. There's another bolt down here, and is there one on the other side too? There's another bolt back here, and so I believe if we remove these 2 bolts, and then there's a fuel line. There's a fuel line right there. You disconnect the fuel line, and there's also a wiring harness right here. You're going to take a flathead screwdriver, lift this red tab up. It'll release that connector. We can get the lower intake out of here. So we could have left it together as one single unit and did it all together at one time instead of in 2 shots. So I'll make sure that you've probably already seen notes I've given you on this removal process. Okay, so we lifted up this connector here, and that allowed this guy to slide out. Now at the fuel rail, let's zoom in. All right, now we're at the fuel rail using this disconnect tool. So it's a 1/2" disconnect tool. Got this from Harbor Freight. So you want to slide it on the line. You want to push the fuel line in and push the tool in, and it allows you to, once you have the tool, you see where it's bottoming out at right here. It's bottoming out right there. That'll allow you to slide the fuel line off the connector. Move the fuel line out the way. We'll plug that up so it doesn't drip fuel over the place. And then now we should be in a position where we can pull off the lower intake. Yep, here she goes. There's the lower intake. You got a bolt still stuck back here. There you go. There's the lower intake. So let's just show you up close what's going on. Okay, so on the front side you have a bolt here, so you want to loosen that up. Back side you have a bolt there. Then there was 2 bolts, short bolts, that I showed you, front and back. Leave those in. You pull the other 4 bolts in the center. They actually come through down here and attach to the block. So if you pull those 4 bolts in the center, the bolt on the outer and the outer, you disconnect the fuel line, disconnect this connector here, the entire upper and lower intake will come off together, and then you can save yourself from having to buy another gasket. So I'm not totally upset about this because this car has got 200,000 miles on it. A new set of gaskets everywhere would not be a bad idea. So now we can look down here into our intake of the block, or the heads, excuse me, and yeah, we have a gasket here. We'll need to replace that for sure. But we're going to stuff some rags into these holes just to make 100% certain that we don't have anything drop down in there. And now you can see all the bolts for the valve covers are now exposed nicely for you. Next on deck are the valve covers. So we're going to remove the ignition coils, 10mm bolts. So all you're doing is pulling those 10mm bolts and then lift straight up, and these things will pop out, and you have to do a little fiddling to get it all the way up. This harness is actually affixed to the valve cover, so we're going to have to remove the harness from the cover as well. I'll show you how to do that, but we're going to need to do that on both sides. So I already started to pull the valve cover bolts. These are 10mm. I'm using a 10mm wrench. It's working fine. And there's a series of bolts all the way around the valve cover. I know we're going to have to get this ECU out of the way, so that'll be on deck. And once we have the valve covers off, that'll expose the top part of the timing chain. Then we'll keep working on down. There's a lot of steps we got to go through to make our way down to this timing cover. So we're going to be draining the coolant and removing this hose here to clear that out. There's a water pump, crank pulley, of course the belts and tensioners, all this stuff on the front part of the motor. Probably going to have to pull the alternator. Yeah. More than likely it looks like we'll be pulling the power steering pump. Hopefully we won't have to mess around with the AC and can leave that on its bracket, but let's just keep working our way down the list. Here's the valve covers after sitting overnight with oven cleaner on them. Let's give it a shot. Not too bad. Might need maybe one more application, but worked really well. Got all that grime off of there. Next up, we're going to drain the coolant. So we have a radiator hose, so we're going to disconnect this hose right here. It goes down to the bottom of the radiator. We're going to disconnect that hose, collect the fluid, the antifreeze, and dispose of the antifreeze responsibly. So let's pull this antifreeze out of here, get it dropped, and then we'll move on to the next step. Let's pull this fan out. Looks like we're going to have to disconnect this hose here. There's a special tool you can buy to deal with these clamps. I'll put it on the screen right now. But This guy should work just fine. Just a pair of needle nose or a pair of pliers. Hopefully, won't get a whole bunch of coolant all over the place. Put it back on. The clamp we want is down here, right there, and it was facing the bottom side of the fan, which is put it in like the exact worst place it could go. So now we can disconnect that and dump that into a bucket of we can disconnect that now and catch it with a bucket. Alright, so now we have the hose disconnected, catching that fluid down there in that bucket, and now we can get ready to remove this top hose connection here. We're going to pull that. We're going to pull the drive belts. It's just a matter of putting a 1/2 inch drive inside of the tensioner, rotating it, pulling the belt off. It's a great time to take a photo of the orientation of these belts, just so we don't get confused when it comes time to put them back on. So we'll go ahead and pull the tensioners off. We're going to move this steering reservoir, power steering reservoir. Bolt here, bolt down there. We don't have to drain the fluid, just remove the bolts, lay it to the side. Then we'll go and pull off the crankshaft pulley, the harmonic balancer. That'll need to go too. So let's get to it. Okay, on the power steering pump, this is a 17 millimeter on this side. I don't know the SAE conversion on that. This is a 13 millimeter or a 1/2 inch if you're using standard tools. So we're going to unscrew these guys, lift the power steering reservoir, lay it to the side. If necessary, I'll put a little bungee or something on there just to hold it in place. Okay, there's 3 bolts holding on this power steering reservoir. There's one more down below. It's another 13 millimeter bolt. So your bolts, the 2 13 millimeters, and then the one big guy, which is on this right side, is the 17. To get the belts free, I have my breaker bar. Let's see if I can show you here. It's in there pretty good. So it's a 1/2 inch drive. Pop it right in there. Then you push downward, and you see how the belt frees up there. See it? Let me zoom in for you. Yeah. So now you can push it down, pull the belt off, and we'll do the other side as well. Same deal. 1/2 inch drive in there. Just rotate it. You'll feel the direction. Tensioners. These are 15 millimeter. Again, I don't know the SAE conversion on that. I might post them up on the screen whenever I go to put this video together for the web. That way I'm already answering the question as you're looking at it. But yeah, we're going to pull these 15 millimeter bolts out, pull off the tensioners, got the belt out the way, and then we'll, I guess next I'm going to go ahead and grab this guy here. And also I want to show you, you see how I have the power steering reservoir kind of laid over. I'm using the side of the radiator kind of as a ledge just to kind of prop it over. Alright, to remove this guy here, you may need to, once you back off the clamp here, take a pair of pliers or something just to loosen that up, because if it's been on there for a long time, it's probably locked in. Then you can just pull this little breathing line off, pop right off of there, set that to the side over here. Then you have 2 10 millimeter bolts that we're going to break loose, and then this thing will pop out of here. There's a seal that comes with gasket kit that I showed you. That'll be replaced when we put it back in. Alright, to get this guy out of there, once these 2 10 millimeter bolts were pulled, I'll show them to you. They have a little black seal or something on them. You're just going to want to rock it gently. Just rock on it, and it'll eventually come out. I pulled on this guy a little bit too up top, and it popped out of there. Now we can just disconnect it from the radiator. Oops, dropped a little coolant. To clean that up, make sure no pets or anything get a smell that stuff. They love it. It smells sweet to them. So you don't want anybody's dog coming through, passing by, licking it and getting sick. So we'll hose that down real good. But this little junction here has got to come out the way. So let's move that out the way. We'll put a rag or something in that hole just to make sure nothing falls in there. Next up is this alternator bracket here. Let's zoom in on these bolts. We got, let me see, one there. One there. I think there's one down there. So there's three I see. And I believe everything's going to come out. So the alternator, I could have probably left the pulley on here, the tensioner on here as well. Pull those three bolts, I think the whole thing will come right off the motor. So let's go ahead and pull those bolts and see if we get it all out of there. We'll have to disconnect the alternator at the back side. Pulling this alternator bracket, as I mentioned, we got these three bolts here loose, here, here, and then down there. There's one more bolt. It's on the side. So we pulled, I jacked up the car, pulled the wheel, and actually there's pretty good clearance here to get to all the bolts. The the repair manual says we have to support the motor from above, move one of the engine mounts, all kinds of extra stuff which really isn't necessary. You can actually remove this alternator without doing any of that from up above, and you can work right through here to get to the bolts for the alternator. But let's see if I can put a light on the bolt we want. Let me see, I'll zoom in. There she is. Right there on the side of it. It's going to be kind of hard to give you a reference point. So let me just pull this bolt. I'll get this whole thing out of there and I'll show you where the bolt's at on the outside of the vehicle. That way you kind of know where to look. But I'm coming up through the passenger side wheel and working through the wheel well. And with an extension and universal joint, I should be able to pull that bolt out. Alright, next we're going to pull this idler pulley down at the bottom. I already have it loose. That's a 15mm bolt. Break that loose and pull that idler pulley. Then next we're going to pull these sensors. So we got these two here. We got a couple on this side. Let's move this ECU out of the way. So we're going to disconnect the ECU and get that out of the way. And as you can see, we're really getting close to having this thing ready to go. To get this this cover off. We'll need to get that crankshaft pulley after that. I removed the ECU. It's just 4 10mm bolts. Before you get there, you have these connectors. So these connectors sit back this other direction, and you need to lever it this way. A lot of times, like this is a real flimsy metal, they don't really cooperate very well. What you can do is you start to pull up on this. You're going to have to push down on this little lip here to allow the, it's kind of locks it in place. So you push down this, that allows you to start to lever this guy forward. You can actually put a screwdriver on this piece here and encourage it to come out. When this slides out, it releases the connectors from this port here, these ports on the ECU. So it can be a little tricky, but you can just work around it. I would say if you've never touched your ECU before, you can expect these things to really give you some hassle. They're just kind of flimsy metal here. It's not really so great. There's also a right here, this ground wire. It's a 25mm, I'm sorry, a T25 Torx. Pull that out, put it back in the hole so you don't lose it. That's on the face of this. Pull that out. We're going to get this bracket out the way. We already have the two bolts here loose. We got one on the side back here we have to loosen up. We can lay all this out of the way and get it away from the cover, the front cover here. Before we do that though, let's pull the pulley off of the power steering pump. So there's a special tool I showed you. Let me get that out. Special tool you're going to need is a pulley remover. This is to get the power steering pump pulley off away from the pump. And this one here I picked up from Harbor Freight, $20 item. I also had a 20% off coupon, so it brought it down to $16. You can find these all over the place, I'm sure, Amazon and your local car parts dealer, but Harbor Freight definitely has it for a nice price. I'm going to post a video. If you have never used one of these before, there's already a really good video out there on how to use this tool, so I'll put that there if you want to take a look at it. But this is what you're going to need to get that pulley off. Alright, so we're going to pull this pulley off. I will show you just what I'm working with here. So that video I shared shows you the parts here. This one actually uses, I think, the smaller size. Yeah, the smaller size on the tool here. You're going to sit this guy right in on here. Now, the one thing I'm going to do differently from the... let's go grab that. Let me just tighten this down so keep it in place. If I can get it to hold. It won't hold. Hold on a second. Let's try this one more time. Here. I'm actually going to use the other side here. I believe the video I'm sharing, the guy did not use the other side. I'm going to put this little sleeve over top that holds it all together, see? Now we can screw it down, and we can go get our wrench, start to tighten it down, and it'll start to pull out. Got a 13/16 wrench on the front of that tool, keep it from spinning. Got a 13mm on the smaller bolt, which is probably not the right size. There we go. So if you don't have power tools, air compressor and air tools, excuse me. If you have that electric impact gun that Harbor Freight sells, I'll put that on the screen. That'll probably help you. But otherwise, you're going to just need to do it by hand. Have a 13/16. Let me show you. 13/16 on this big bolt, which is probably a 20mm conversion. I don't have a 20mm wrench handy, so I use the 13/16. I use a 13mm on this guy, which is going to be the same as a 1/2 inch. And you want to hold this guy with the 13/16 to the 20mm, and then torque down on that. Got some shavings on here. That makes me a little nervous. Hope I didn't screw anything up. I'm thinking the shavings came off the face of the shaft. Yeah, from the pressure applied to it. That's what it is. So I got this guy out the way. Got the last bolt off the side of this bracket for the ECU. And remember, you got the two here that were already loose. Instead of unhooking the ground wire and all that, I'm just gonna lay it over top. If I have to get it all the way out of the way, I'll go ahead and take it off and get it out of there. Now I'm finding like down here, you're seeing this eaten up, dry rotted wire cover. So what I plan to do is replace this stuff with some new wire covering and get rid of this old brittle stuff. So you don't want a wire that ends up getting cooked from the heat being on it. So yeah, we're gonna get that done. So we got these sensors we got to pull, and I'll give you an example here. This one here I pulled out. You may have to just rotate it a little bit, and it'll pop right out, and that'll get the sensors out of the way. You can just lay those out the way. So I'll get this one here, I'll get this one down here, this one. I don't know, I may just be able to unhook. I have to look at the shop manual. I might just be able to unhook this wire from here and leave this in. Yeah, might go that route. But let's see how they come out. We have the sensors removed, and I just pulled some of these guys out, popped them out of there. This is your variable valve timing oil pressure sensor, and I noticed on this one here, don't know if you can see it. There's actually some metal filings on there. That doesn't make me feel good. But I highly recommend that you get yourself a little lunch baggie and cover these babies up. You don't want to get them dirty. Definitely clean them off before you put them back in if you have any dirt on there. You want to protect them. I'm actually going to leave this guy plugged in to the connector. The right way. There we go. That way it's easier to figure out where they go when it's time to put them back in. So I'm just going to take a zip tie. Just like zip tie them off. That way you kind of have them protected. Just lay them over for the time being. So there's 4 of them. There's one over here I got to tie off. And then there's 2 more down on the other side. So there's 2 on each side. So definitely wire tie those off. Keep them clean. You don't want any dirt or gunk getting on them because they are sensitive. And say my son has a, my other son has a Lexus, 99 Lexus ES300. He has valves like this on there, but much smaller. But they end up, if they get gunked up from lacking oil changes or anything like that, the car will run crazy. And I actually had to replace them on his car. So with that in mind, we want to keep these very clean and make sure we have them all clean and wiped off before we put them back in the vehicle when it's time. Now we're removing the crankshaft pulley. I have air, so I use my impact gun 19mm socket. Quick shot, broke it loose. If you don't have air, then you'll be looking at locking the flywheel. You don't want to try to use the transmission in park or something like that to break this nut loose. You really want to lock the flywheel. Get yourself a good strong breaker bar with that 19mm. Break it loose. So that's pretty much what you're going to have to do. You may need to add like a section of pipe to the top of that breaker bar to really give you some leverage, depending on how tight it is. With the impact gun, it spun out pretty easy. A lot of oil in there too. I think this is a source of a bad leak. It's the I'm assuming it's going to be the crankshaft pulley. I'm sorry, the crankshaft seal, because that oil is just creeping right out of there. Yeah, I suspected the crankshaft seal was bad when we first bought the vehicle, and it's been dripping down the back of this crankshaft pulley around to the oil pan, just creating a big mess. So fortunately we'll be replacing that when we go to put this back together. Okay, we have our crankshaft puller set up here. Let me zoom down. So I'm going to actually pull the crankshaft pulley off and then show you a nice clear shot of what I'm doing down here, what I did down here. It's going to be a little hard to get a good look from the little bit of space I have to try to get the camera in there. But anyway, I have a Y-shaped puller. You can get these from everywhere. AutoZone, O'Reilly, Advanced Auto, of course Harbor Freight, online on Amazon, eBay. I'll put some links out there for you if you need one. But this is a pretty common thing you'll find at pretty much any auto parts place. Alright, a word of caution here. I use this puller to pull off this crankshaft pulley, and you can see the little holes. So you want to line this guy up with the holes, put some bolts in there, and it locks that on, and then you screw this in. It pushes against the shaft from the crankshaft and pops the pulley out. Now this is actually supposed to have that on the end. Must have fallen off. So when I started out using this one, it went inside the hole where the bolt rides and actually mashed up some of the threads. So I had to get a 9/16 tap and go in there and tap out the threads. So you don't want to make that mistake. So make sure when you're using your puller, it has that flat part on the front so that it goes onto the face of the crankshaft and doesn't go down into the hole. All right, we're going to try a different one of these pullers. So the one I've been using has a much shorter center bowl here. This one here has got a much longer one. I just found this in my drawer. So we're going to put this guy on and see if we can get enough distance on that screw. So like the pulley is being pulled this way and I'm running out of room on this shorter bolt. I need more room to get it further away from the shaft of off the crankshaft end. So let's bolt that on and try this one. All right, so you can see we have the larger puller on there. And there you go. I turned it a few times. It was pretty close, but yeah, you may need one of these pullers with a longer stem on it. So now that's off. We can get ready to pull the cover plate off now, finally. This is what you should be looking like before pulling the cover plate off. You can leave the water pump in place. It comes out with the cover plate, but there's a series of bolts all the way around this thing that we're going to have to pull them out. I'll show you, you know, the locations and the sizes. I'm sure there's going to be some that'll be a little longer than others, so we'll make for a little bit more confusion when it comes time to make sure we're putting the right bolts back in. The video I shared with you earlier, the gentleman used actually something he bought at Home Depot, numbers, stick-on numbers. So you in theory could say number 17 is what you have. You put a 17 on that bolt, and then right next to it here on the cover plate, I put a 17 there, so you can always match up where everything goes. I mean, if you really want to be super meticulous and make things easier on yourself, it may take a little bit more time in the disassembly, but it'll make the reassembly go a lot quicker. But I'm hoping that this video may alleviate the need for any of those numbering systems or tags, because you can kind of just reference the video. But let's get this cover plate pulled off. Okay, I had to take a break, so we have a lost light for today. But I wanted to get this this cover off, so I'm gonna pull it off and take it in the garage where I got some good light. Unfortunately, I have a car in there that is not moving. Otherwise, I would have pushed this car into the garage and we wouldn't have to worry about light right now. But anyway, it's all loose. I needed to do just a little encouragement, just some very gentle leveraging. You know, you have your gears here. You have to be really careful, but I kind of leveraged against this bolt here, just very gently, and it just popped loose. Okay. So it is kind of glued on there. You know, it has that adhesive around the outside, the gasket maker. So I just need a little nudge just to kind of pop it free. So now she's free. We're going to just walk it out and I'll show you where the bolts are at. Now we have the cover off. We can really examine what's going on here, what caused the timing chain issues, the rattling, and the eventual, you know, stop the motor not firing any longer. So, common issue is build up sludge on the passenger side or the right side of the motor. The belief is, and you know, I've done my research online. Not to say that everything you read online is true, but the dominating belief is that the ventilation on the right side of the motor is lacking compared to the left side of the motor. And we had a pretty serious fail, which is something I've seen in other videos and other people online reporting. The plastic face to this chain guide is missing, and when I look down here, let me see here, let me find it. There we go. There's a piece of the guide there. Also, when I pulled off the front cover last night, there's pieces that fell out and hit the ground. So Yeah, all around the motor, there's a piece back here. Let me see if I can get your eyes to see it back there. There's another piece. So this is supposed to be on the face of this tensioner here. Back this camera up. Supposed to be on the face of this tensioner here. So the whole thing kind of, I think what happened is it maybe got starved of oil. And another fail is this tensioner totally locked out. It's not retracting. So it locked up and put a tremendous amount of pressure on this chain, which of course caused the guide there to kind of just destroy itself. The same thing happened on this side. So we got metal on metal. And remember, whenever I was pulling out the variable valve timing oil sensors, I found metal shavings. My belief is the metal shavings were generated from the chain running against this metal face of this guide. So that leaves me really concerned for this motor's health. You got metal filings, they got splashed around. We got pieces of tensioner guide, chain guide that came off and are missing. So here's another piece down here. My belief is like straight down here is the opening for the oil pan. So I'm definitely going to need to drop the pan. And that's not the easiest operation on these vehicles. You have to support the motor up top, and then we have to loosen up the motor mounts on the bottom. Allows the does that allow the subframe to drop? I guess what would happen would be, I'm thinking that the subframe, you have to loosen up the subframe and create space to get the oil pan out. So I'm going to have to pull the pan, and I'm hoping that a lot of these missing little pieces are all down in the pan and didn't get sucked into the motor. I'm sure that the pickup tube down there has a screen on it, and I assume there's a magnet in that pan as well to pick up any kind of normal filings that happen over the course of the life of the motor. But I have no idea what I'm going to find when I drop that pan, but I'll show you guys when we get there. So yeah, I am concerned that maybe this motor got trashed, but we're going to go ahead and continue with the operation just so you can at least see what's involved with doing this. I don't think this motor is going to be trashed. I think this motor will still run. It will be okay. I've just seen too many people with the same failure where you have a timing chain, and I've seen ones where the guide has slipped down, and I've seen others where the guide is gone, and the report is that these people are driving their vehicles. So let's just hope that this works out for this car. But otherwise, I think this thing will, unfortunately, they're probably getting junked. We could swap a motor in it, but yeah, yeah, it's just we'll see. So let's just take it one step at a time, and hope that the car will fire up okay. We'll go ahead and do the timing chain replacement. I have the parts. Wasn't terribly expensive, so go ahead and throw them on there and see what we got. This is what I'm talking about regarding the ventilation. So this is the passenger side valve cover. That's the driver's side. So the vent, you can kind of see, not the biggest opening in the world. And if this vehicle wasn't getting the oil changes, on a steady according to the intervals, the required intervals, and maybe some skipped oil changes and just bad maintenance on it, you get a little sludge build up. This little tube just starts to get blocked. Next thing you know, you got all kinds of gunk building up inside of this side of the motor. And next thing you know, you have problems with your timing chain, because all that stuff is oiled. And there's oil passages that go all through that timing chain setup. So it's just so critical with these cars that they get serviced regularly. They get prompt oil changes. Using that Mobil 1 full synthetic, no cheap stuff. So as these cars get older, I'm sure people start to cut corners with it. You know, since we've owned it, we've only used, you know, Mobil 1, and we've given it on-time oil changes. But I really wanted to do that timing chain when we first purchased the vehicle. But you know, my son was really anxious to get rolling with it. The car was running okay, and you know, we kind of put it off. But you know, unfortunately, I think we put it off a little bit too long. But on this side of the motor, you have a nice big vent tube. So that driver's side tends to do much better, and doesn't tend to fail as much.